Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a fascinating and honestly pretty thrilling look into one of Earth's harshest environments, inspired by the article Creepy Desert Creatures. You know, when you picture the desert, you probably imagine rolling sand dunes, cracked earth, shimmering heat, and, well, just a whole lot of absolutely nothing, right? But today, we're going to completely shatter that image. We're looking closely at the unexpected, highly adapted, and frankly, sometimes terrifying life that calls this extreme landscape home. It's a world where just staying alive requires some truly fearsome traits.
Okay, let's dive into this. Is the desert really an empty, lifeless void? Your gut instinct might be to say, yes. I mean, the intense heat and the total lack of water make it seem totally uninhabitable. But the reality? It's the exact opposite. This environment is definitely not some barren wasteland. It's actually a highly active, fiercely competitive ecosystem teeming with creatures that have figured out exactly how to thrive where almost nothing else can.
Section 1. The Empty Desert Myth and Extreme Evolution. Which brings us to Section 2, Misunderstood Monsters, specifically focusing on the tarantula.
So the extreme harshness of the desert doesn't stop life. It actually acts like a crucible. It forces the animals and insects living there to evolve into absolute survival experts. And when we talk about these extreme survivors, the tarantula is usually the very first creature that pops into our heads. But the truth about tarantulas presents a huge contradiction. Yes, they're giant, and yes, they're incredibly hairy, which makes them look absolutely terrifying to most of us. They fit that horror movie aesthetic to a T. But here's the absolutely crucial fact we've got to understand. They're mostly completely harmless to humans. Their creepy appearance is just an evolutionary byproduct, perfectly adapted to their harsh environment, but definitely not a sign that they're out to get us.
Now, knowing they're mostly harmless doesn't exactly make them any less startling when you suddenly run into one, especially because during certain seasons, male tarantulas will literally wander right across the open desert in search of mates. Just picture it. You're standing in the vast, seemingly empty desert, and all of a sudden you see this mass migration of giant, hairy spiders. Like the article points out, it creates scenes that look straight out of a horror movie. I mean, it's a totally natural biological drive for the spiders, but for us observing it, yeah, the fear factor is undeniably high.
Section 3. Tiny Terrors, looking at venoms and stings.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the incredible contrast between size and threat level. See, in the desert, true danger doesn't always come wrapped up in a giant, wandering, hairy package. Oftentimes, the biggest threats are the ones you can barely even see. We have the giant tarantula, visually terrifying, sure, but mostly harmless. But then compare that to the tiny black widow spider. Despite being incredibly small, it's armed with venom that is extremely powerful and can seriously harm humans. It completely flips our expectations. It just proves that out in the desert ecosystem, it's really not the size of the creature that matters, it's the chemical arsenal it's packing. And that's exactly why the black widow is widely considered one of the desert's most feared predators.
And the black widow is definitely not alone out there. The desert boasts a literal arsenal of pain. We just talked about the black widow's crazy potent venom, but you've also got scorpions roaming the sands that can cause just intense pain with their venomous stings. You even have aggressive ants capable of delivering incredibly painful venomous bites. Seriously, these tiny insects and arachnids are the true potent threats out there. They use intense pain and venom as their main tools to survive and dominate in a really brutal landscape.
Let's move on to Section 4, Masters of the Strike, featuring the rattlesnake.
Let's move to and see how this builds a picture of the perfect desert predator. Moving up the food chain from those tiny venomous insects, we run into a much larger, highly specialized reptile, the rattlesnake. It's really the quintessential, iconic desert nightmare, isn't it? Let's break down their arsenal. First off, they employ highly evolved heat-sensing abilities to locate their targets. In an environment where things hide exceptionally well, they don't even need to see to know you're there. They can literally feel the heat radiating off your body. Mind-blowing, right? And second, once they've locked onto that target, they launch lightning-fast strikes. They use this unbelievable speed and precision to hunt down their prey, but also to defend themselves fiercely if they're threatened. It's just a brilliant, terrifyingly efficient system for survival.
Section 5. The Night Shift.
You know, understanding how these creatures hunt is really only half the story. To truly understand this whole ecosystem, we have to look at when they're actually active. And this brilliantly illustrates how extreme temperatures completely alter the landscape based on the desert clock. So, during the day, the sun is so scorching, so intense, that simply being exposed to it is basically lethal. So what do these animals do? Well, they hide to survive. They burrow deep down into the sand or wedge themselves under rocks. And that is exactly why the desert looks utterly empty during the day. But when that sun goes down and the temperatures finally drop, that's when the active night begins. All those predators, the rattlesnakes, the scorpions, the wandering tarantulas, they all emerge right into the dark.
This specific behavior is known as nocturnal adaptation. It's the evolutionary survival strategy of hiding during the scorching daytime heat and emerging at night. I really want to emphasize this point for a second. This isn't just some quirky little habit they picked up. It is absolutely mandatory for their survival. Literally, if they don't hide, they die. But because they're active exactly when we humans can't see a thing, shrouded in pitch-black darkness, it adds this massive layer of mystery and, let's be honest, fear to desert wildlife. These creatures aren't just venomous or lightning fast. They're essentially phantoms of the night, perfectly adapted to their harsh home.
So the whole thesis of this explainer is perfectly captured in this quote straight from our source material. All of this is, quote, proving that the desert is far more alive and far more dangerous than it first appears. The horror movie tarantula migrations, the potent venom of the tiny black widow, the heat-seeking lightning-fast strikes of the rattlesnake, and the fact that they literally all operate under the cover of darkness, it all points to a vibrant, highly specialized, and absolutely deadly theater of survival. The desert is definitely not an empty void, guys. It's a masterclass in extreme biology.
Which leaves us with this final kind of lingering thought. If the empty desert, a place we've so often just dismissed as a barren wasteland, is actually this alive, this complex, and this dangerous, what other hidden worlds in our natural environment are we vastly underestimating? What other empty spaces are just waiting to reveal their own fearsome secrets once we actually know how to look? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep your curiosity and maybe a really good flashlight handy.